In this gripping exploration, we imagine the immediate chaos following Duterte's assassination. His supporters, fueled by grief and anger, might rally in the streets, igniting a fervor that could challenge the government's stability. Critics, meanwhile, could seize the moment to push for accountability, demanding justice for his controversial policies. The government may face immense pressure, with the possibility of martial law looming as a desperate measure to maintain order. What unfolds next could reshape the Philippines forever. In this another episode of our What If series, where we explore alternate realities and possible outcomes of significant events. In today's episode, we dive into a highly controversial and sensitive topic. What if former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte gets assassinated upon his return from The Hague? This scenario would send shockwaves across the nation, triggering unpredictable political and social upheavals. What would be the reaction of his supporters? How would his critics respond? What would happen to the Philippine government, and would martial law be declared? Stay tuned as we break this down into different possible scenarios. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy thought-provoking content like this. Chapter 1. The immediate aftermath. It's a beautiful day at the airport. Thousands of Duterte supporters, waving flags and banners, eagerly wait for his arrival. As the plane's door opens, security personnel stand at attention. Then, Rodrigo Duterte steps out, his signature swagger and confident smirk on full display. The crowd erupts into cheers. He raises his hand to wave. Suddenly, bang! A gunshot rings out. Duterte clutches his chest, staggering forward before collapsing onto the ground. His security detail rushes in, shouting orders, but it's too late. More gunshots follow. Screams fill the air as chaos erupts. The man once feared and revered across the nation now lies motionless on the tarmac. The crowd, moments ago filled with joy, is now in sheer panic. People are crying, running, and shouting. The nation has just witnessed an assassination. If Rodrigo Duterte were assassinated upon his return to the Philippines, the immediate reaction would be one of shock, outrage, and confusion. Duterte's supporters, especially those from Mindanao and his political strongholds, would likely erupt in anger, blaming foreign and local enemies for the attack. His critics, particularly human rights activists and opposition figures, might express condemnation while also questioning whether this could lead to deeper political turmoil. The Philippine National Police, PNP, and Armed Forces of the Philippines, AFP, would likely lock down Metro Manila and major cities to prevent potential uprisings. But this is just the beginning. Let's move on to the possible reactions from different groups in the country. Chapter 2. Duterte supporters versus anti-Duterte sectors. The division between Duterte's loyalists and critics has always been intense. His assassination could push the country into deeper chaos. Supporters may demand vengeance, targeting opposition figures, activists, and anyone suspected of involvement. Anti-Duterte groups may celebrate or remain silent, fearing retaliation from his fanatical base. Social media would explode, spreading conspiracy theories about who was behind the attack, foreign powers, political rivals, or even Duterte's own allies. Could this spark a new wave of political violence? Let's examine the Philippine government's next moves. Chapter 3. The Philippine government's response. The government, under President Bongbong Marcos, would be under extreme pressure to maintain order. The Philippine Senate and Congress would launch investigations, but divisions within the government could lead to political gridlock. If protests and riots escalate, a state of emergency or martial law could be declared. Loyal Duterte allies, such as Sara Duterte, might use this as an opportunity to solidify power and seek revenge. Could this assassination become a catalyst for another shift in leadership? Let's see what Mindanao's reaction would be. Chapter 4. The Mindanao Factor. Mindanao, Duterte's home region, would be at the center of the chaos. Davao City and other pro-Duterte areas could become hotspots of armed retaliation. Pro-Duterte militias, vigilante groups, and private armies could mobilize. A push for Mindanao's autonomy or secession could gain traction, especially among those who feel betrayed by the national government. But what about the Islamic groups and rebel factions? How would they react? Chapter 5. The role of BIFF, MILF, MNLF, and other Islamic groups. The Bangsamoro region and its armed factions would face a difficult choice. The Moro Islamic Liberation Front, MILF, and Moro National Liberation Front, MNLF, might distance themselves, fearing further instability. The Bangsamoro Islamic Freedom Fighters, BIFF, and other radical groups could exploit the chaos to launch new offensives. The risk of a full-scale insurgency might rise if government forces overreact in suppressing unrest. Would this lead to a nationwide state of war? And what about Bongbong Marcos? Chapter 6. Will Bongbong Marcos declare martial law? With chaos erupting, would Marcos resort to martial law? If riots, bombings, and political assassinations occur, Marcos might use this as a justification to declare martial law. However, doing so could risk backlash from human rights groups and the international community. Would the military remain loyal to Marcos, or would there be factions seeking to overthrow him? With all these tensions rising, what happens to Marcos and his loyalists? Chapter 7. The Fate of Bongbong. Marcos and his loyalists. Marcos Jr. would face an existential crisis as a leader. Would he consolidate power, or would he be forced to negotiate with Sara Duterte and her camp? Would his own allies turn against him, fearing he is too weak to handle the situation? If unrest spreads, the possibility of a military coup cannot be ruled out. Could this even lead to another people power revolution? Chapter 8. A new people power revolution. The Philippines has seen revolutions before. Could another one emerge? If the assassination leads to mass protests, a new wave of political activism could take shape. If Marcos mishandles the crisis, he could be forced to step down, similar to Ferdinand Marcos in 1986. On the other hand, if martial law is imposed effectively, protests could be crushed, and a dictatorship could emerge. But this is just one possible future. Let's wrap up with some final thoughts. The assassination of Rodrigo Duterte would undoubtedly be one of the most explosive events in Philippine history. It could lead to a new era of political turmoil, regional conflicts, and a struggle for control of the nation. But what do you think would happen? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more What If content. Stay tuned for our next mind-blowing scenario.